Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the justBernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Without further ado, let's talk a little bit about ayahuasca. And for those of you that don't know what it is a shamanic medicine, for lack of a better term. It is a hallucinogenic that is used in ceremonies for people to, I guess, retrieve their spirit, find their spirit, connect with spirit. It does create a life-changing experience for many people. I had posted on the event page a very interesting article. It's funny. Yes, I admit it, I do watch Days of Our Lives, and it turned out one of the actors quit after doing an ayahuasca journey. He just said, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. He changed his entire life. And I thought, well, you know, if you're going to quit, that's a very positive reason and hopefully a good example for others in the Hollywood mentality type work. So let me tell you a little bit about Tracy James. Tracy is going to be joining us today for the full 2 hours. I'm very grateful. She is the co-founder of the Shamanic healing organization, Aya Integral, and she has helped hundreds of people with their ayahuasca ceremonies in the jungle, and she's going to share a great deal with us today. How she supports others to work with ayahuasca with love and to help reduce the fear. Tracy returned recently in the last several months, I'm assuming, from the Amazon and was working with an Amazonian shaman as an apprentice for several months. So this is going to be very interesting, and we are very happy to have you here, Tracy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bernard. I'm very happy to be here.
And it's funny, we've been talking about doing the show for many, many months now. And
we have.
I think you were on your way to,
now.
Yeah, you were on your way to Peru or Ecuador, wherever you were when
Peru,
I asked you. And you're back now, so we get a fresh take on everything that you've been going through. Absolutely. Well, Tracy, let's start off a little bit with you. What was it that got you interested in doing this type of work? What was it that brought you up to this path? We all have a wonderful path, and yours is especially wonderful. And what was it that led you here?
Yeah, it was my initial experiences with ayahuasca were very much for personal reasons. You know, I had, you know, actually, the use of a hallucinogenic substance like ayahuasca, you know, I had been of a mind, as many people that I encounter who feel hesitant to do anything like that. You know, I had never done LSD. I was never that. You know, I just never did that stuff. You know, I meditated a lot, and I just felt a real connection to the divine, and I really never felt drawn to use a substance. And so I had a friend who was actually a medical doctor who said to me that given the work that you do, because I'm a life coach and I do energy work and you know, kind of a body somatic type process work. And he said, you know, there are indigenous people in the jungle who do this, you know, who understand this, and they've been working with this stuff for centuries, and you really should go down there and learn from them. And so I don't know, it was, you know, it's intense when you think about, okay, I'm going to leave I lived in LA at the time, and I'm going to go down into the Amazon. I was never, you know, outdoorsy girl by any means. You know, I didn't go camping a lot as a kid or anything. So, you know, to think about going down to the jungle and being in a hut and stuff like that, you know, it was intense, but I felt a calling to it. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. And really, yeah, boy, it, went down. I worked with female shamans. That was what drew me. I wanted to, I was so interested that there's a particular indigenous tribe called the Shipibo, who really, women and men are, highlighted equally as shamans in their culture. And so worked with women and was blown away. Was really blown away in good ways and in not so good ways. I mean, it really was one of the hardest things I've ever done, I have to say. And not everybody who does ayahuasca will say that, but for me, it really, ayahuasca has not been easy on me necessarily, but she is, she's challenged me a lot and has been one of my greatest teachers.
Wow. And so what was it that led you to do this for the public? Was it a calling? Did you feel the need to bring this to the public?
Well, what was interesting was as I was in that experience, I did the first time I went, I had 7 ceremonies. Ayahuasca was done in a ceremonial context, ideally. And so I had these experiences in the middle of the jungle. And one of the things that happened for me is I kind of experienced the contrast of, I kept thinking, wow, this thing is amazing. I could see just old wounds. And I mean, I've done years of therapy, I was a therapist, I was like, just really, done a lot of work on myself. I was like, this thing is pulling up stuff that I never even knew was in there. I was like pulling things out and I was having awarenesses about myself. And so I started to see that the applications, I started to see, oh my goodness, this, people need this. And so it just, I started to wonder how I could possibly integrate it into the work that I do. And it definitely was a journey, but then kind of synchronously, which as we know, there's no accident, but there was an opportunity for me and my dear friend and colleague, Lucine Usani, to go together and actually lead retreats in the jungle. Like literally, so it was from just doing it to then I'm leading retreats, which,
wow.
Was a huge shift. It was, okay, move out of my place in LA, put everything in storage, move down to the jungle, and have a completely different life really fast.
Funny how spirit works that way sometimes.
No, it really is. And I'm not going to say I was so, all in. And there was a point where I started, before I actually moved down to Peru, and this was in, I first went in 2009, and then I moved down there in January 2010. And I started to get dizzy. So like before I really fully made the decision, I was like, I would lean down to tie my shoes and I would like get dizzy and kind of tip over. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And one of my best friends is a chiropractor. So I went to her like, what's happening? And she's my go-to person for all the weird things that happen on the spiritual journey. So it was good to have one of those people. And so she, tested out my body and she also does muscle testing and things. And she says, well, it's actually more of a kind of emotional thing. There's a conflict between your mind and your heart. And so my mind was thinking of all the, how am I going to do this and walk away from my business and all kinds of things that I've done and, my life and my friends. And my heart, which was saying, oh, come on, sister, this is your path. Mm-hmm. Get going. And so when she told me that, I thought, okay, I just got to let go and trust. And it was incredible. It was incredible.
That's a very courageous thing to do, to trust the universe like that, isn't it?
It is, and it usually doesn't show, the advantages aren't always apparent until later.
No, they're not.
Hindsight, you can look at the tapestry of your life and say, oh, wow, that was, that's great, from a distance. But when you're in it, yeah, it's not always as easy to let go in those moments. But it's worth it every time I've done it. I've never, ever regretted that.
Yes, absolutely. Now, for our listeners that may have only heard of the word ayahuasca today for the very first time, or for those that might think they know a little bit about it, tell us, I guess, the shamanistic definition of what is ayahuasca.
Sure. Well, from a shaman's perspective, ayahuasca is a spirit. Ayahuasca is a plant spirit. And also chacruna, who we didn't really talk about that yet, but ayahuasca, the brew itself, it's a hallucinogenic brew, like a drink. And as you described, it's a purgative and a hallucinogen, and it is made up traditionally of two plants cooked together. Ayahuasca, which is a vine, and chacruna, which is the leaf of the chacruna plant. And so from a shamanic perspective, it's not just about the biochemistry of the thing. Mm-hmm. It's about the spirits associated with those plants and connecting with those plant spirits and asking for their wisdom, for their healing, for their guidance. And so when one works with ayahuasca, and this is, researchers are actually finding this as well, when you use ayahuasca in a completely sterile environment, devoid of any type of connection to, if it's like they're, in these kind of research environments, the effects aren't as strong. The actual outcomes aren't as successful as when ayahuasca is done in a ceremonial context. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's because it's about the plant spirits. It's about an integration of, this biochemical process that occurs in our bodies when we take it, and a spiritual process that occurs. So the shamans, and shamanism was our main way of interacting and healing throughout history, human history. And it's only more recently that, we have this kind of medical model, allopathic medical model. And so, in the past, we were connected more to nature, and we would go outside, and this is what the shamans do today, like in the Amazon. They'll go outside and they'll sit in the jungle, and they'll think about someone who has a specific either physical ailment, spiritual blockage, or wound, or psychological issue. And they'll meditate on that person, and they'll ask the plant to show them what the appropriate way of healing that person is. And they will receive the guidance. Mm-hmm. They will hear, go to this tree, carve off the bark, boil it in water for this much time, give it to them for this long. Like, they will get all the information about what to do and how to heal. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And all of us have access to that. Yeah. This is not just about, it's not something special that shaman can do necessarily. It's something that we all can do if we practice and mm-hmm. and learn, the specific kinds of techniques, and we open ourselves, we kind of cleanse ourselves. So, so this is a very spiritual, multidimensional experience for them.
Wow. And as far as the physical properties of it, if I remember correctly, I believe that the leaf, I forgot, what is the name of the leaf?
Chacruna.
Chacruna. I hope I said that right.
Yes.
Chacruna. I believe I read something, and correct me if I'm wrong, that physically, and I don't know how much of the scientific aspect you know, but I believe it is it stimulates like the DMT within the ayahuasca or vice versa. It does something where it's a catalyst that one does not work without the other.
Right. Well, it's actually really like improbable and incredible that these plants have even found each other. You know, that people learned to blend these plants, because chacruna is actually a leaf more from the mountains. It's not even traditionally from the jungle. So somebody figured out that, you know, got this inspiration to go more into the mountains and combine it with this vine from the jungle, which is pretty incredible. But yes, the actual makeup of ayahuasca, for the DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine, which is the chemical compound that we associate with our pineal gland, our third eye, kind of opening our vision. If we were to just take chacruna, which is the element in ayahuasca that has that DMT, it would never be able to survive our stomach, basically. It would get destroyed by our stomach, the acids and stuff like that. So when you combine it with ayahuasca, it basically has the ability to make it through into our brain.
Oh, okay.
So then we're able to actually, have the actual hallucinogenic experience from the DMT, which is very difficult to just from DMT itself.
Right.
It's just, yeah.
I was going to say, so it kind of allows us to, I guess, metabolize it slower so it can actually have an effect, a profound effect.
Exactly. And basically the ayahuasca has what are called monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAOIs.
Mm-hmm.
And so those MAOIs keep the body from breaking that DMT down. And so they basically allow the chacruna to get through and the DMT to be expressed in our bodies without being destroyed. It's pretty miraculous when you think about it.
Yeah.
Other
like how do they think of this?
Right. And they say, this was their communing with the plants.
Yeah. And as far as like the concoction itself, you said that it's what are they, like mashed together with water or something and like simmered for a few hours or?
Yes. You take the ayahuasca vine, which is a, ideally, the ayahuasca vine would have grown for at least 4 or 5 years. But unfortunately now they're not even growing it that long. But you want to have, a nice ayahuasca vine, and you cut it into kind of foot-long segments and then pound it. So when you're making it with, I make it with the shamans, and they have these big clubs that they make out of wood, and you just pound the vine until it's just shredded and totally, there's nothing hard. It's all just shredded wood. And then they take a huge pot and put it over a fire, like a fire pit. And they layer in this like hammered vine with the chacruna leaves and water. And if it's actually done in the traditional way, they also blow tobacco smoke on it. The tobacco in the jungle is called mapacho.
Uh-huh.
It's a sacred tobacco, and then a very powerful plant spirit as well. And traditional shamans will say they don't do ayahuasca without mapacho. They don't separate them. So they blow the mapacho, and they blow their intentions. They ask the spirits of those plants as this brew is cooking to bring their healing into that concoction, into the medicine. And so the use of intention is very important to these kind of shamans. It's everything. Anything they give you, if they give me even other types of medicinal plants or whatever, they will sing into them, they will speak into them before you take it, so that it actually works for your body and can be received not only in the physical but on the spiritual levels as well.
Wow. And as they are doing the intentions, how long does the brew have to boil for? I've heard very long hours for some.
Oh yeah, approximately 10 hours.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And
it's an art. It's an art. It really is. There's so many kinds of brew. The way, it depends on how refined it is. Ideally, by the time it's finished, how I do it on my retreats anyways is, that the maximum a person would need to drink to have a very strong experience would be 1 shot glass, like our typical kind of shot glass.
Oh, wow.
So it needs to be very refined So
and you don't mix it with honey to make it taste better.
No, honestly, some people do.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. I've never actually tasted any that was like that, but it's supposed to be rough,
Yeah.
It's like
part of the initiation, absolutely.
You don't go to ayahuasca for a high. You really don't, because it's not an easy. There are many things you could do that would be a lot easier than that. You go to ayahuasca to get real. You go to ayahuasca to look at yourself, and so it's not as tasty. I've had some people who they like really clean everything, and they clean the leaves, and and everything's just like done really nicely, and I've noticed it tastes better. But unfortunately, the shamans I work with, it's all like, it's just,
you got to eat the dirt.
Everything's in there, and it's not so tasty. But usually people say it's not so bad.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not so bad the first couple of times. It gets worse. It's so funny watching the shamans drink it now. I work with a couple, particularly my main teachers, man and woman, and they drink it, and it's just like their body just shivers. It's just like after, they've been drinking it since they were like 12 years old, and now they're in their 50s, and oh my gosh. Yeah.
So, okay, well, we're getting ready to come up on a break, and we've basically covered a bit about the definition of ayahuasca and what it's made of, what does it do. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk more a bit about why people approach ayahuasca, and maybe we can go a little bit into what the experience is like. Anyway, Tracy, tell us. We'll be right back after this break.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the justBernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Today we are doing the ayahuasca experience with Tracy James, who's joining us live from, I believe, are you in New York right now, Tracy?
Actually, I'm in Florida.
Oh, you're in Florida. Lucky you.
Yes.
Well, nice and warm.
Yes.
What part of Florida are you in?
I'm in Venice right now.
Oh, you're in Venice
Florida.
Beach?
Visiting.
Cool.
Yes, so it's great.
Very
my
nice.
dad's down here. So. Nice.
Very cool. Well, thank you for taking time out from your vacation to join us.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
Anyway, so before the break, we were talking a bit about what is ayahuasca, what is it made of, how do the shamans approach it. I guess a very good question for you right now, Tracy, would be, what would be a candidate for ayahuasca? Who would want to do it? I mean, I know I would love to, but what would be a good candidate, and why do most people choose the ayahuasca experience?
Well, there are a lot of different kinds of candidates. Some are people who are on a spiritual path, who are really looking to expand their minds, their consciousness. There are people who are maybe artists or writers who want to increase their creativity, want to tap into vision. Maybe they have writer's block or something like that. There are people who have had challenges with addictions, who have felt like they haven't been able to get underneath what is driving that addiction, to get underneath shame and the deeper issues that have had them returning, whether it's, okay, maybe you stopped smoking or drinking, but then now you're eating a lot, or, what is that underlying issue that, those kind of people come to ayahuasca. We have, and there's more and more research being done about these folks, the people with anxiety, depression, PTSD. And the PTSD is an area that I'm particularly interested in moving forward, working more with vets. We're coming back, 22 vets a day, committing suicide.
Yeah.
In this country. And they're, dosed up with all kinds of prescription medications and things like that aren't helping them, and basically suffocating their life force.
Mm-hmm.
And, ayahuasca is, you want to be careful. You can't necessarily go and use ayahuasca if you're taking many other kinds of medications. You want to be careful with drug interactions, and things like that. You can't take many kinds of antidepressants and things like that. But, for people who have some sort of trauma, or depression, ayahuasca has a way of getting underneath the parts of us that defend against that. Sometimes, like, you can go into therapy, which is wonderful, but sometimes there are parts of us that don't, are so terrified and so in pain that we can't even get at them ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you take ayahuasca, it basically, it lovingly puts that part that kind of blocks us from ourselves to the side and says, now let's get in there and let's really look at what's going on here. It's like the grandma, we call her grandmother, and she comes as a female many times to people in ceremonies. Then she'll just say, okay, like, let's get in there and let's clean this out. Let's clean the house. And so, people who have been carrying things like, maybe pain from old relationships, whatever, whatever baggage you have, you go to ayahuasca with it, and she's going to help you purge it.
Yeah.
That's her thing. That's her medicine. And so, and it's loving. I think some people will, and I think this is where you have to be kind of conscious, coming to ayahuasca, because for some people, if you're not willing to really look at your stuff, you shouldn't be taking it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You just shouldn't, because it will just scare the heck out of you. It will just be, it will traumatize you again, because where we're fighting her and resisting, it just becomes this battle instead of allowing her help. So, so anybody who ever comes on a retreat with me, I, talk to them in advance, and we they have questions to answer, and because not everybody is ready for that. And it doesn't mean that's wrong, about them or whatever, but it's a very deep kind of work, and people need to be aware of that and be prepared. And if it's okay to be scared. I mean, hey, I'm scared, when I have a ceremony, I'm drunk, like, I don't know, maybe 200 times or whatever. And I have that feeling of like, oh my goodness, it's never been the same.
Right.
So it's healthy, I think, to have a respect and, apprehension before going into such an intense experience. But I think that it has to be people who are willing to go through something intense and able to stay with themselves through it and not, freak out, basically.
Right.
Not let our minds, whoa, man, it's intense where our minds can take us.
That ego can be stubborn, let me tell you.
So it's really, working with ayahuasca is an incredible opportunity to master your mind.
Yeah.
Because the things that come up in the mind can appear in visual form. So they're more intense than just a thought. It's like you might have a negative thought in your day-to-day life. Like, oh, I'm such a loser or whatever. If you think that about yourself. Well, when you're in ayahuasca, there's a good chance you're going to see the darkness of what that thought looks like. And it's not pretty.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You're going to see what it does to you, what it does to your body, and it's not pretty. And usually, if we see that, it actually stimulates healing. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing to myself? Because a lot of times we just don't realize the impact of our thoughts. So, if you can be in the experience and have an observer mind, people who do meditation or have some sort of spiritual practice are really, that's really helpful when you're navigating ayahuasca, to be able to be present, to observe without getting caught up, in the process and in the emotions and in the visions, which can be intense.
Yes, they can. I'm having not to sound like I'm making a lightheartedness here, but I'm having a flashback at my experience. I had one very severe experience, and I'm not going to go into too much, only because there are parallels I want to point out. Excuse me. I was, I don't know if you've heard of Michael Harner. He was really big in the 90s.
Sure. I love this book about shaman.
Yeah, The Way of the Shaman was a really good book. And when I was starting off on my path, I read that book. I was already involved in shamanism and Wicca and, all this other New Age stuff and Buddhism and everything. I was very eclectic. Still am very eclectic. But I remember reading that book and just he had images of that people have drawn during the ayahuasca experience. And, I mean, some of them were horrifying, like vultures picking the skin off their bones and, I mean, to the point where they were, dead in the vision, so to speak. And I believe he called it the little death. It was a part of the initiation, he called it.
Yeah, or shamanic death. Yep.
Yeah, the shamanic death, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. Again, spirit works in very strange ways. At the time, I was living in Clearwater, Florida. You're in Florida. Dunedin, a little area close to Clearwater called Dunedin. And I had gotten a new landlord, and it turned out he was a practicing shaman. As I'm reading this book, and I'm like, wow, talk about universe perfect timing, And he's like, you want to do the experience? I said, yes, I do. And, he taught, he trained me a little bit. But it was interesting because of the way that he prepared me was that I had to write a paper on the difference between a shamanic awakening and schizophrenia.
Huh.
I thought, wow, well, that's a very scary thought. It's like, what is shamanic awakening versus schizophrenia? And so I did the paper and whatnot, and we did the experience. And I did. I didn't use ayahuasca. I wish I did. We just used regular LSD 25, a very high amount. But it was very interesting because I went through that little death. I felt like I was dying, and it wasn't until I let go and I said, you know what, just go ahead and let yourself die, and that's when the beauty started happening. It was a very, very amazing experience. But I'm wondering that, as far as the process, like after that I did a few more shamanic journeys. I try to do one every 2 times a year, maybe. I would try to do it as I called it a psychic plunger. Just kind of clean out my chakras. Yes. Just to keep everything in tune. And I couldn't help but notice that over the years of doing, I haven't done it in about 10 years. I wish I would have the opportunity and the place and the people that feel comfortable to do it. I might have to call you soon. But I can't help but notice that it felt after a while that even though every particular journey was different, that there were certain, how shall we say, milestones or guiding markers of, okay, this is that. It was almost as if, and I remember my teacher had told me, he goes, eventually the shamanic map of the other worlds, other dimensions, becomes very, how shall we say, it becomes, it begins to show itself to you, where you can begin to maneuver through those worlds after seeing a specific symbol or sign. Is that making any sense? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely, it does. And I think that, there is a progression that occurs in working with things in this way, working with hallucinogens or for spiritual, in a spiritual context, where, initially people will come and it's just more like, they're very unfamiliar with navigating the experience, so it just takes a while just to know you're going to be okay. And obviously you want to be in a safe environment, so what you're saying about not doing it unless you know it's the right thing, to have some discernment about where you do this kind of thing and who you do it with is critical, because you are navigating other realms. And yes, there is, as you progress through it, you begin to kind of get a sense of the landscape, and build your own skills and your own tools, and you find friends. You have kind of spirit guides or spirit animals, or you can or plant spirits, and you grow and you learn how to explore. But I also think that a lot of that has to do with the space that you're in. Like there can be spaces where people, like whoever's holding that space, the shaman, or I don't know in what your kind of experience, how it was exactly, but I know in traditional indigenous Amazonian shamanism, the shaman cleanses the space in advance and basically sets the tone, like says, because there are unbelievable numbers of dimensions that you could be exploring. Yeah. It's just ones that are very angelic and very loving and beautiful, and ones that are horrific and that you really don't want to hang out in. And so to be able to work with someone or be in a space where the shaman is experienced enough and good enough to actually make it clean. Yeah. So that you can have those kind of journeys without being slammed from just all the other craziness going on. So it's intense. Basically doors get opened. Yeah. And I think one thing that I really encourage people to do is to, read books like that with, Michael Harner, and where you're learning your own shamanic skills. You're learning how to create sacred space. Yeah. How to keep your space to open, open dimensional portals, but also keep things purified, because it's the Wild West out there.
It really is.
It's like anything can show up.
I mean,
sometimes I see people like, woohoo, what up? Like they don't have any, they don't really have a sense of thought about, how they might want to engage in the experience, or, a sense of respect for yourself.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It's kind of almost like a person who's, goes and sleeps with whoever, has sex with whoever, and doesn't think about it. You want to think about it, like who you're getting into, energetic bed with.
Yes,
is
exactly.
like something to consider, and because you have value, and I think people don't always think about that, in these kind of things. But you want to really feel comfortable. You want to feel that it's safe. You want to make sure that people have integrity. And, you might have opportunities to do this kind of stuff, but what's the point if it ends up being, kind of grody? And then I've seen people have to then come back and like clean it off,
yes,
in some place.
You come back more soft than you started.
Yeah.
So I guess it is fair to say that it would be a good idea to kind of read the driver's manual before you get started. Maybe some of these books are a little helpful.
Absolutely, and my book will be out. I'm co-writing a book with Lucine Usani It'll be out next year, and that is for this purpose. It's basically a guidebook, a handbook for people in the how to prepare, what to do to get ready, what to do when you're in ceremony, and when you get home, how to integrate this big thing that happens.
That's a big one, because I did not know how to integrate, and it took me 10 years of emotional suffering to finally bring it all together.
Yeah. No, I think people, one of the challenges with ayahuasca, and many of these kind of things, but my area of expertise is more with ayahuasca itself, and ayahuasca is not legal in the United States, and so I work with it in the jungle in the Amazon, so people come down to the Amazon, but there are people doing it in the States not legally, and there are a lot of people who don't have a support system, who don't have like we do, I do coaching, work community, or actually somebody to process your experiences with, because there's so much in there, there's so much being communicated in the visual experience and the emotions that arise and in what gets purged. And sometimes people are, so isolated, that because they don't want to necessarily talk to people, or they don't want people to find out that they've done it, or and it's sad. Because
it's like they're embarrassed for knowing a better version of themselves or something.
Right, and it basically leaves them kind of halfway in the process, because it's not just about what happens in the ceremony when you drink ayahuasca. It's afterward as well. Like it's about your life. Ayahuasca is a being, like it's an intelligence, it's a spirit, and it has its own intentions, and it wants good for you, and it wants good not just in that moment of ceremony, but in your life. Like she wants you to have great relationships with your family. She wants you to be successful and thriving in your career and your life, to be healthy, to be connected to the earth. And those things take integration, those things, so once you have your experience, you go back home, and it's going to take something to change. You might have to change some relationships. You might have to renegotiate some relationships. You might have to change, some of your eating behaviors and exercise and whatever. You might have to get in there and keep processing, like keep digging into, your own emotional landscape and seeing, what's there, what's been limiting you. And having community is the optimal way to do that. And I know you provide that, Bernard. I think it's really a wonderful thing, with your groups and things like that, because
thank you.
People need that.
It's very important. And it's funny because many of us, especially those that listen to the radio show, we have, I guess you could call a undercurrent or a community of people that are having these natural spiritual awakenings. And I can't help but wonder how helpful it would be to use ayahuasca as you're having your awakening, or to get involved in communities of those who are having a spontaneous awakening for those who have had an ayahuasca experience, because it's the same thing. A lot of people get scared. They don't realize what's happening to them. They don't have a way to integrate it, like you said. And again, that's literally the motivation of why I do what I do. Is I could not believe that there was no. I mean, now there's hundreds out there, but we were one of the first that were doing that online, where we were having a forum for people to exchange. I'm having. I remember, I don't know if people still use this, but about 10 years ago, everyone was using that word downloads. I'm having these profound downloads, major epiphanies. And actually, my friend's going through that right now. But anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual experience. We'll be right back after this break.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I just want to take a moment to remind everybody that Revolution Radio is powered by you, the listener. So if you can, please take a moment and make a small contribution to keep Revolution Radio on the air, which keeps the Just Bernard Show on the air and all these other wonderful shows that we have here on the station. Anyway, welcome back. I would like to welcome Tracy back. And before we went on the break, actually, I forgot what we were talking about. I'm having a mind blank. Oh, the idea of community, and I think that is very important. Is that something that you guys provide with Aya Integral?
Yes. We're still growing that, but yes, basically we're exploring actually creating teleclasses and kind of like different kinds of support for people. So we're actually reaching out more to see what are people looking for. What would be helpful to people who have drunk ayahuasca or who are thinking about it. And, we're wanting to create a course that people can download and do, which is like, a few weeks before they drink ayahuasca, because you need to go on a specific diet before. And then afterwards, stay on the diet for a couple weeks and, to kind of help walk people through the whole process. But yeah, there's a whole lot of room there. I think now I'm coming out of the jungle in a lot of ways, over the last, since, last 4 years, I spent a lot of time there and training and leading retreats. And, so I'm doing my best to spend a little bit more time back in the U.S. and, it gives me more opportunities to look at that, how to create more support structures and things like that.
That's great. And speaking of your time, in the jungle, tell us a little bit, about your experiences working as an apprentice, and of course, how do the indigenous Amazonians feel about white people or Westerners using this type of technology, which is what it really is? What are their thoughts on it, and how was your experience living and working with them?
Well, there are many tribes in the Amazon jungle, and also different cultures even in the mountains and Andes that have adopted the use of ayahuasca, and an incredibly diverse array of traditions that have come up around it.
Right.
And I mean, ayahuasca is used in Colombia all the way down to Brazil. And so, it's incredible. I have the majority of my experience is with a certain tribe called the Shipibo. And the Shipibo, people I just adore. They're a very open in general, as a culture, they're very open. They really love when people want to come and learn from them and work with them. Like it blisses them out.
Wow.
They're very affectionate. And I think in more recent times, they're also becoming more aware that their culture is in essence becoming extinct.
Right.
And so it really means so much to them when people want to go and actually learn their traditions and keep them alive. Because even a lot of the young Shipibo, the last thing they want to do is study with grandma to learn about plant healing. You know, they want to go to the city. They want, to be on Facebook, and there's just a very different movement, in the younger generation toward, a more modern life or whatever.
Westernized,
so,
yeah.
Yes. And so it's interesting. So they're, on the one hand, they very much love that we want to learn from them. But I think what often happens is Westerners, we go down, we work with shamans, drink ayahuasca, and then, get a little bit, learn a little bit. And then many people just kind of run with it. They kind of then take ayahuasca back to their own countries and start serving it, and aren't really trained, aren't really following the traditional path, which was developed for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, for centuries, these folks have been doing this thing, and I am definitely all for evolution, and I think that ayahuasca, I've seen that in my visions. Ayahuasca wants to grow. She wants to be around the world. She's on a mission.
Right.
And so, great. But I think, when I ask them, so often the answer is, well, yeah, it's fine. That, people are doing the medicine out there, but they're not really invoking the plant spirits. They haven't done plant diets, which we can talk about what that is. But basically, the shamans have these relationships with numerous plant spirits who the shamans say their power comes from the plant spirits. So you've got, all these people all around the world with very limited understanding of how to actually, work with this thing. And so the shamans just say, well, it's not going to be as good. It's not going to be as strong. It's not going to be as effective. There have been people, even my dear friend and colleague, Lucine, that I'm co-writing the book with, she drank ayahuasca for years in Colombia, and then came and worked with the Shipibo and was blown away. Like, it was a completely different experience. The Shipibo are more like surgeons, good ones. Anyway. And they go deep, and they drill in there and they dig out your stuff. And they sit right in front of you. I mean, some of them just right in front of you, and they sing, because a lot of their healing comes through song, like sound healing. And they invoke the plant spirits, and they're singing right into your body. And, oh my goodness, like, you're just sobbing. You don't even know it's so intense. And, it's surgical. And so I think it's, in their particular culture, they know what they do, and they know how hard they've worked to get to where they are. And so they don't, it's not necessarily like, they never say it shouldn't be happening, that ayahuasca is out in the world and in all these countries and used by all these people without that much experience, or served by people without that much experience. But they also say, it's just not going to be like it is with us. And it's true. I mean, I've experienced that, so, I think that there's a lot of evolving going on in the ayahuasca world.
Right.
But I also, I do feel that with anything, we saw this with doing sweat lodges and those people who had died. And,
yeah.
You got to be careful. Like, sometimes people just want to run with things, and it's a very sacred, very intense experience where care needs to be taken, So, when I have ceremonies, I mean, you don't just leave people to their own devices or whatever,
Right, exactly.
Like watch them and nurture them. And so I think, I think that there's a lot of change in the ayahuasca world and transformation going on. And my prayer, my wish is that it is integrated with wisdom, that it's grounded with experience and, not just kind of like a free-for-all, which in a lot of places it is at this point. I mean, the stories I hear are just like, oh my gosh, people, oh my gosh, tell me stories all the time. I was in this other country and this person gave me ayahuasca and mixed with other weird stuff, and give me a break. Like, you have to mix ayahuasca with other stuff.
Right.
Like, it's not good enough by itself.
It's interesting. I have another friend of mine who has worked with a lot of the native cultures in South America and actually around the world. And what she says is you always have to be careful when there's a white person and a dollar sign, and to kind of look at it and see what is it an exorbitant amount? Like we've mentioned that sweat lodge situation. I think he charged like $10,000 for that weekend.
Yeah.
It's like right there. That should have been a exclamation point in your eyeballs.
Yeah, and there's so many people crammed in, and it's just.
And I know it's happening in South America too with the ayahuasca, where they're charging $20,000-$30,000 for the experience, and that it can't be. I'm sure the ayahuasca spirit is probably vomiting herself.
Yeah, I know.
But it's good to be aware, and again, may it always and only be used with integrity and for the highest good of everybody involved. I know life is not free. Trust me. I know we all have our bills to pay, but you don't need to be a millionaire over a weekend.
Yeah, it's true. And I also, I think that. There's something about this kind of like the fast food culture, and I think sometimes people can get caught up in that. If I pay more, somehow it's going to be faster for me.
Right.
And if I like there's this feeling that somehow I can shortcut things. And it just isn't. Plant time is slower, like our bodies are slower, like our minds, we have all these ideas and we want to do this and that, but the reality is we got to stay connected with the body. And, I think that as long as we can keep feeling, does this feel in integrity with me? Does this feel in alignment? Whatever, I really encourage everybody to just really listen to your body and to your intuition about if something feels right or not. And there are a lot of people out there who have had bad experiences with shamans and with ayahuasca.
I'm sure. And I've read about them myself. Yeah. Yeah,
it's heartbreaking for me because it isn't necessary. It's a failure of the support. Because, experience can be challenging and difficult and even scary, but when you have support there and when you're able to kind of navigate that in a way that isn't more traumatizing, you leave it learning something. Because everything is happening for learning. Everything.
Yes.
Everything evolves us. But if we have an experience where we end up feeling more like a victim than, an evolutionary growth being, then, it continues the trauma and it continues the old story. So I just, really encourage people, like if you did have a bad experience, I don't mean that you have to take ayahuasca again, but don't let it be something that's just stuck on your spiritual balance sheet, is like another trauma or another negative thing. Like work on it, get in there. Why did that occur for you? What did it bring up? what is needed to actually resolve and heal that thing. Because, it's just, I just meet so many people like, oh, I did that. Oh, it's horrible.
It's just another learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's on every level ayahuasca works. It's not just, you can have okay, first of all, just in terms of dose, I was talking about the shot glass thing, whatever. You can have a huge guy, okay, and he could take a quarter of a shot glass and have a super strong experience. And you could have a tiny woman who might barely feel a full shot of it. Like, it's not about your physiology. It's not about your size. It's different. The way that ayahuasca works is she needs permission from you to enter. She doesn't take you, she doesn't push herself onto you unless there is an invitation and an opening. And how people close that door, and this is not just with ayahuasca, how we close the door to spirit in general, through our fear, through our denial, through our physical, just total impurity, for lack of a better word, just over toxification. And so, so it's a process, the process of opening with ayahuasca. There are many people who've said, oh, I had ayahuasca and I never felt anything. And it's like, well, that's kind of a sign that, you want to keep working with it, although it's not, you want to work with really good shaman, really good facilitation, because that's the point. What do you need to open? It's not just opening to ayahuasca. It's about yourself, in your life. Because I guarantee the people who are having that issue with ayahuasca is just a simulator. It's a mirror of what's going on in your life.
Right.
And so it just works like spirit does, but it's just kind of a condensed, the process is like a 4 to 6 hour experience in ceremony. And so in that experience, it's like this very intense, condensed mirror. And you get in there and you're, shown things you may or may not know about yourself. And if you are willing to do what you talked about, remember, when you were saying about when you'd had that experience and you had that death.
Yeah.
And that letting go. I mean, it's one of the scariest things in the world is that's our ego.
Yeah.
That's terrified of letting go to our spiritual selves, to our higher aspects.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely terrified. And would honestly, there's some people who even consider, killing themselves versus letting go. It's fascinating how that works. The ego and the mind works. We'll trash yourself with, substances and, horrible things, but you can't just let go. So there's that experience where the more resistance there is to letting go, the harder it is for people to have an experience with ayahuasca. And it should never be forced. I'm like, never, ever, ever. Anybody comes in a ceremony with me, they know you don't have to drink ayahuasca. You can do a ceremony without it. The shamans are used to the way they traditionally work is they drink the ayahuasca and the person who's in the ceremony, coming to the ceremony doesn't. That's what's normal for them. And so it's a little bit more, sometimes they would give it as a kind of prescription for someone, but really not commonly. And so, it's a more of a kind of Western thing where we came in and are like, hey, we want to do this thing. And they're like, okay, come on in, you're welcome to do it. And, so we kind of shifted the way it's done, by participating at a more intense level.
Yeah.
But it's still, it doesn't, it won't violate our own boundaries. ayahuasca won't.
Right. Unless we allow it.
Right. And so on
Absolutely.
some level, like if you're having a really intense experience, and some people don't really want to hear it. Like I'm about radical personal responsibility.
Yeah, me too.
You're saying. I mean, I don't, I'm not like, in your face or uncompassionate to people. Things can be really hard, but in the end, we do have to look at like, how did I create this? What is this about? What is the learning here for me? What becomes available for me by having this particular challenging experience? That's where the juice is.
Absolutely.
In every area, in life, whatever, but particularly with ayahuasca.
It's funny, you're reminding me of when I had my experience. I remember the person that was teaching me, and mind you, they weren't like this fantastic shaman. They were probably, fairly inexperienced, but they knew enough. But they remember them telling me, "You'll know it's working when you start crying." I was like, what? He's like,
that's a good indicator.
When you start crying, that means you're breaking down the barrier. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And it was very strange. And I don't want to get into it yet, but after the break, we're going to go into more of the actual process. But I remember when he said that during my experience, and again, it wasn't ayahuasca, but it was a similar ceremony, just crying because I was such a horrible person. And I don't mean that in a self-loathing way, but in my behavior. I was embarrassed of my behavior.
Yeah.
I had grown up very upper middle class. I was very snobby and class-oriented, and of course I became a hippie after that. But
yeah.
But I remember just being so embarrassed of how I was so I don't know, but it was, again, just that crying of, oh, my God, I was such a bad person.
Yes.
I can't believe I didn't have compassion, and I was so self-centered. And, so, again, it's kind of what you're saying there. You have to allow that reflection. Let the medicine allow you to look at yourself, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
We have about 10 minutes in this segment, and I was wondering, we didn't have a chance yet. I wanted to hear a little bit about your experiences as an apprentice with these people. What did they make you do? What was your day like? What did they beat you? I don't know. Did you have to walk on fire? What were some of the skills they taught you, basically?
Well, I have to say I'm still in process.
Well, we all are.
Still, they're still at it. But yeah, I think one of the big things with the teachers that I have, the shamans that I work with, it's a lot about cleansing. It's a lot about cleaning yourself out. And so there are things like, you do things to purge, to vomit, to clean out in all kinds of ways that are rarely pleasant. So I've definitely been through a lot of kind of cleansing, purging type of situations. Another thing is what I mentioned before, which is called the plant diet.
Uh-huh.
And so, if you ask a shaman, how did they learn? They're going to say from the plants. They might have had a teacher or something, but they'll say that predominantly their way of learning how to heal and work with people is from the plants. And so basically what I do when I'm down there, when I'm doing my own work and the kind of apprenticeship work and not retreats, is basically take time in isolation. A lot of times it's a hut with nothing going on, nobody around. My favorite ones are when I can find somebody, I can hire somebody to make my food, and they just bring it twice a day. And the shamans come every couple of days, and we do ceremony, and they check on me. But basically, it's about taking this certain plant, a particular teaching plant, and just being in quiet and listening to the teachings. And that can sound nice and restful and peaceful. And of course, the jungle, it usually involves bugs and other kinds of weird, natural, things that you often don't want, in your bed and stuff. But but also probably the most challenging experiences have just been with the plant spirits themselves. They're the most amazing and the most challenging. Like where you know, well, at least for me, you know, in these experiences, it's about finding your deepest fears and feeling them and facing them.
Right.
And finding the courage in yourself to really look at them. And, you know, in the shamanic perspective and in my perspective, because this is what I have experienced, you know, when we have pain, when we have fear, there are energies that feed off of that. Dark, not so nice energies. And so the whole experience is about basically cleansing yourself of those spirits. You know, it's about purifying your mind and your body, aligning more with light than with darkness. And to do that, you've got to face some stuff. And it's really scary sometimes.
Yeah, very.
It's really scary sometimes. So I will say, you know, I think it's so down there it'll be like, you know, on the most part, it's been like 10 days to 2 weeks in that particular kind of experience, in solitude, facing my demons. And the shamans don't have a whole lot of, I mean, they're compassionate on some level, but like to them, this is nothing. I mean, what they have done is like, you know, my main teacher, he was out in the jungle by himself with no hut or anything, just living, you know, like under leaves and eating what's out there for 5 years.
Wow.
Until the plant told him he could stop. So, you know, my little like 2 week, you know, foray, they're like, suck it up, sister. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, and not that they're not loving or whatever, but, you know, they're not like coddling me in any way.
Right. It's like it's all relative.
Like, yeah, you know, and so there's like, yes, you're going to have to phase into that, you know, and they'll be by my side if I'm facing against stuff that's really intense or, you know, darkness or whatever, and to help me learn to kind of source, you know, how to dig deeper in myself, you know, and to sing, you know, as you're learning from them and kind of from the plants, you know, the plants ask, basically they gift us with things and energetic gifts. And one of those are songs, and they like to be sung to. Nice. They like to be invoked through song. And so you know, you're learning these songs and singing them. And so sometimes, you know, where I think I'm can be a slacker is if I'm in, you know, I'm in ceremony and, you know, and, you know, these people sing like for hours and hours and hours and hours. And so sometimes I'll start, you know, I'll stop singing and I'll just get like really into my experience with the medicine, and they'll be like, sing, you know, and they just like in the middle of ceremony, they just turn to me like, you better start singing again. And, and so, you know, there's a lot to it, you know, there's a lot to learning, and for every shaman, they have their own gift. You know, the woman I work with, she knows like every plant you could imagine, you know, and what it does and what it's for. And the male, he's more into, you know, the actual ceremony itself, you know, and he just brings it, you know, and sings, and, you know, it's just outrageous. So, you know, I think every shaman has his or her own gifts and areas of specialization. And, you know, so I'm learning those for myself. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to be different. You know, I can't not be a hybrid of this. You know, I mean, I will just never be a Shipibo. And that's okay. But, you know, I just can't ever really come from that. mindset and that deep, like it's in their DNA and their bones.
Yeah.
But I can be me, and I do have a path, and so I'm just kind of still, on that path to find where I am in the integration of their work. So like I'm a life coach. I work on the phone. I'll sing to my clients on the phone. That's been integrated now.
Wow,
There's no ayahuasca, involved, but they say they feel a difference. And so, I've been doing it. And like, so there's just the process of finding that balance and finding, where spirit wants to express through me that, I probably will always be on that journey, but
wow.
I really appreciate them and their help. And they in no way try to get me to be Shipibo, although they would love it if I lived down there or whatever, but they want me to be me. And I just value that so highly because I've been in a lot of different kinds of spiritual communities and, and often there's a pressure, to kind of conform.
Oh.
And
well,
not with them.
Tracy, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back. You are listening to the justBernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are having the ayahuasca experience today with Tracy James. I just wanted to remind everybody that if you would like to find out more information about the rest of the work that I do myself, not only do I do the Just Bernard Show, but I also have I do video classes as well as blogging and a whole bunch of other stuff that goes along with the work that I do with the Global Illumination Council. If you would like, you can visit our new platform at thegic.org. Again, that's www.thegic.org. We are reaching approximately 2 million people a month, trying to support humanity in this awakening process, whether it be your political awakening, your spiritual awakening, your consciousness, and giving you tips, tricks, and a community to work with. By all means, we are also member-supported, so if you can, by all means, go to thegic.org and click on our crowd fund, and you can make a small donation there to keep programs like the Just Bernard Show going, as well as all the other things that we are doing. And so, Tracy, I was thinking while you were talking last, one of the things that you had mentioned was your life's purpose, and I couldn't help but think about my experience and how they kind of gave me my life's purpose. And when I say they, I ended up, and I want to get more into the process and the experience during this last part, but I remember I had met up with these beings, these light beings, and they started, it was very interesting, and I'm wondering if any other people that maybe you've had this experience of others, where they not only talked to me about me, myself, and my life, but the planet. And they were showing me what was going wrong with the planet, what was right with the planet. They were showing me poverty and hunger and war, and then they would show me the beauty of nature. These incredible visions. And I wasn't very, again, I was very self-centered. So I didn't care what was happening in, Gaza or, Palestine or India or China. I didn't care what was going on over there. I didn't even know. But they kind of like showed me all these horrible, the horribleness of humanity on this planet, and they kind of gave me my mission. And my mission was to teach the world to return to the source of all things, or align with the source of all things, which I was like, well, I don't know what that means. It took me 10 years to figure it out. I'm wondering, have you had experiences like that, or do other people talk about experiences like that where it's not only personal, but it's planetary?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, whether you're drinking ayahuasca or not, like, we're all connected. There's like I think we're getting to see more and more with quantum physics and, where science is coming to explain more about that or help give our minds an understanding of that. but you know it. You know, people can have an experience of oneness in meditation or, you know, in any kind of, you know, spiritual experience or just spontaneously, you know. But we are one. We are connected to the planet itself and to each other in a way that our ignorance can't hide, you know, can't deny. And so when we begin to wake up and connect in with true intelligence, you know, into our wisdom, we start to realize that you know, we can't turn a blind eye to what is going on this planet, you know, to our brothers and sisters. Like, we can't pretend that there's not anything going on, you know, and stay with our little lives. And so in ayahuasca experiences, there are many ways that shows up. People can experience, like you had said earlier, the awareness of their own personal, the effect of their behavior on others, you know, on people in their lives. You can have profound clearing and releases related to, you know, your relationships. And then even bigger than that, you can start to see ancestral patterns. You know, you can do work to heal and release challenges that have been affecting your family for who knows how many generations.
Right.
And so that stuff starts coming. And then you also get this larger global, these messages of not only just seeing what's going on the planet, but also purging for the planet.
Right.
I mean, I had one ceremony that was all about, it was right around the time of the, one of those big oil, I think it was I don't remember where it was. There was an oil spill. It could have been the BP one in Florida, but I think it was something else. I think it was like something in, no, it was a nuclear thing in Japan. Or
the
like
Fukushima accident. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Fukushima. And I had this ceremony, and I was like in the jungle. I really didn't know about what was going on, whatever this thing was that came up. And all of a sudden, my whole ceremony was about toxic waste and nuclear waste and literally like puking it out and purging it.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'll just do what I need to do. I don't know, exactly what all that means, but I feel very much that it is, I feel that the earth, like we are parts of the earth herself.
Yeah.
Like there is a way that we participate in the healing of this planet very actively if we are willing to listen. So that's what I'm working with, and what I encourage people to listen for. And we are all important. Like every one of us is important and is a part of the whole. And the more we listen to our own guidance and where we feel drawn to make a difference, even in the smallest way, just to smile at someone or help someone carry something or, to larger missions like you're talking about with what you're doing with G.I.C. and bigger, wherever people feel drawn, that is our larger purpose acting through us. That is the divine, that is our communion with the earth happening through us to make something better. And so, I really work with people on listening.
Great.
It's really what it is. How do we really listen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad. Thank you so much for doing that for us and the planet. With that being said, I'm very interested myself, and I'm sure our listeners are. You said that you provide retreats, or that you will help people through the ayahuasca experience. If someone were to come down with you, and I know our friend, our mutual friend, was down with you a couple of months ago. what would one experience? What can they look forward to? What's it like? I mean, do you make people sleep in a hut and throw up for 3 days, or what do they have to be prepared for, and the good, the bad, and everything? What's it like the day to day?
Well, they are in a hut in the jungle, and it's for 12 days. The retreats I like to do for 12 days because I feel that it's a good amount of time to really go deep and start coming apart.
Yeah.
And get put back together. So, and in that time we do 7 ayahuasca ceremonies. And so there's 2 in the beginning, and then you get a day off, and then there's 3 in a row. And that's usually where, things start coming apart.
Right.
And then a day off, and then there are 2 at the end. And then a day to kind of prepare for leaving and, integrating and stuff. So it's different for every person. Some people, just being in the jungle itself, some people just thrive and they just love it and love the adventure of it.
Mm-hmm.
And others, it's just very taxing. There are bugs, there are,
no AC,
rain, no AC. But if you can come to terms with that and know that, that's ayahuasca's home. She loves the jungle. She is the jungle.
Yeah.
And so coming to her doorstep, we come into her house and just make ourselves available for healing, bring all our baggage and lay them at her doorstep and just say, hey, can you help me out? And so the process is, we do purging stuff, we do vomitivo before we start drinking ayahuasca, which is a kind of we drink a certain plant and then a ton of water until you spontaneously throw up and clean some of that stuff out of your belly. We also, we eat a diet that is as, natural as we can. The we eat chicken and vegetables and quinoa, and the diet itself that you need to do before and after also has, very low kind of oils and fat, not very much salt, no sugar, and we really try to reduce processed foods and things like that, and no ham and pork stuff, and so it's basically, you're already ideally prepared. Your body's prepared for the intensity of the ayahuasca, because if you come into ayahuasca really, with like all that, like you just ate a cheeseburger the day before or something like that, then it's a lot harder. Like you're in the bathroom a lot. It's just, it depends on the person, I will say. Some people,
right.
Very few I've seen be able to kind of get away with that kind of thing. But on the whole, like with the kind of retreats I do, it's, it's a sacred thing. If somebody's going to come, you're going to want to, honor and
right.
respect the plant.
And honor your body to prepare.
And yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So, you're, in ceremony itself.
What's the ceremony? Is there a shaman involved? Is there drumming?
Yeah.
Is there singing?
The ceremony, there are shamans. Usually I have at least 2. And they prepare the space themselves. They clean it and clear it and make it really squeaky clean energetically. They, once you're in the ceremony, they sing to each person individually. Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that we do on the retreat, just to say, is every person gets an individual session with the shamans to talk about what they want to work on, what's going on for them, you know, give them a little bit of an overview of their life and who they are as a person, so that the shamans can really connect with them and actually work with them on a kind of a treatment plan. How will they help this person work towards certain things through the course of the retreat? And so in ceremony, the shaman is aware of that. Like, okay, this person really, has some old relationship wounds, or this person is a, Afghan, from veteran from Afghanistan, who like really needs help releasing trauma, or, and so they have that relationship and that understanding. So when they're singing to that person, they actually can, really more surgically go in there and get at, some of the core wounds. Mm-hmm. And the shamans themselves, how they describe it, and I've experienced it myself, but certainly, the way they experience it and describe it, it's just incredible. Like when they look at us, when you have your kind of ayahuasca glasses on, when the shaman does, the shaman looks at you and basically sees almost like tubes or lines, and they see that where there are blockages, or kinks, and like if it's like a hose, it's like there are places in our energetic hose and emotional hose that get kinked.
Right.
And so through singing, they also do something called chupa, which is in Spanish means sucking. Mm-hmm. So they will do a sucking extraction, which when I had done in one of my first ceremonies, blew me away so completely that I got it. I was like, oh my gosh, these people, like, they're doing something down here. And so they can do sucking extraction. They use their breath to blow on you, and to kind of clear away old emotions or darkness, negative energies. Mm-hmm. They also use massage and touch. They're like pressed into places where they feel like things are blocked or kinked to start getting them moving. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, they use song, and they sing right into it, and they invoke the plant spirits that they have guided who are there supporting them, wanting to help, to go in and do surgery on that person. And so when you're sitting there in ceremony, you might just be like, listening to them singing to you. And I mean, it's such a sacred experience. When you think like, oh my gosh, I'm right in the jungle right now, in the middle of the Amazon, sitting in front of this, this shaman who's, expressing a tradition that nobody even knows how old it is.
Right.
And I mean, just that in and of itself is amazing. Like, I just get so many moments where I'm just like, I can't believe I'm here. Like, this is so incredible. But then so you're there and you're with them, and you're ideally getting into your body and feeling into things and stuff. But sometimes you're not feeling anything at all. And then all of a sudden you're crying. Like you're sobbing, like out of nowhere. Or all of a sudden you just start throwing up. And it's like there's a purge, there's a release. And when you're throwing up, at times you can actually see what you're releasing. Mm.
Is this are you under the influence right now of the medicine? Okay.
Yeah. You can visually, in your vision, see, oh my goodness, this is this rage I was holding on to, or this was this shame or judgment I had toward myself. And you can just let it go.
Yeah. And how long? How long does the ceremony usually last, or the effects of the medicine last?
Well, the ceremony itself, the intensity of the medicine is usually about 4 hours, but it really depends on how the shamans use the word clean, like how clean your body is. Mm-hmm. So people whose bodies aren't as clean, like, just been eating a lot of junky stuff for years, or maybe they have yeah, I mean, maybe they've had to take certain medications for a long time or something like that, and that kind of dampened their life force and their, energy in their body and kind of toxified them. So if you're not really cleaned out in your body, sometimes it could just be like 2 hours or 3 hours or something like that, or even less light. It could just be really light. For me, it's intense for about 5-6 hours, and then it starts to lighten, and like it's pretty much an all-night thing.
Right.
So but it took. I think they were working on me for like 2.5 years before they said my body was clean. And granted, that doesn't mean there's not more work to do, but there's like a level that they are trying to get us to, which is like returning to ourselves. So on average, a person will feel the medicine for about 4 hours, and then it'll stay. Like there's kind of like a way that even after you leave the retreat or a ceremony, even for about 2 weeks to a month after, there's just like a sense of well-being.
Yeah.
It's like the vibration of it is with you. And that's why I encourage people to stick with the diet, because you can really keep that going. It's when we start really getting back into life and busyness and TV and whatever, that it starts, we just kind of lower our vibration.
Yeah.
So
we start dampening it.
Yeah. So the longer we can keep ourselves open and, cleaned out, the more we can hear that or feel that. And that's really not just about ayahuasca, like obviously, just spiritually, in general. But that's generally what people experience, is that it kind of dampens. And the goal then is that someone, once it kind of completely releases from them after they're back home and after a month or so, that they're living at a higher level than they were. That's the goal. That they're it's kind of settled. Sometimes it can be disappointing for people because they want to feel how they felt right afterwards. And so there can be like an attachment to it. But I think it's, people know that, just let go, like keep being with it, keep yourself as clear as you can, and, you'll settle into a higher level than you were, and then you just keep working from there.
Sounds wonderful. Now, we only got about 30 seconds left, so let me ask you, are you going to be doing any retreats coming up soon?
Yes, I've got a retreat in April.
Oh, okay.
So you can check it all out on the website, www.ayaintegral.com, AYAINTEGRAL.com. But yes, got a great 12-day retreat in August that I'd love to
August or April?
Some of your... Sorry, April. I also have one in August.
Okay.
April.
Well, we're out of time, everybody. We will see you next week. As a matter of fact, we're going to be talking to another woman who is preserving ancient spiritual traditions, Marie Rose Fonley. We'll be back next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Thank you, everybody. We love you.